Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special call this evening. We have had just a couple of technical things that we wanted to work out, make sure that everybody was joining us okay. And I can't tell you how exciting it is to be watching this webinar line completely max out tonight. Tyler, I told you. I told you there, brother. I'm super excited. Let's see. Can you take yourself off mute? Can I hear you okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Great to have you with us.
Thanks,
Hey, we are, I texted you earlier today and I said, dude, I am putting it out there. I am making that proclamation. I am declaring it. We are going to max these lines out. And sure enough, we have absolutely maxed out tonight's webinar. In fact, the bandwidth is so stretched tonight, I am struggling to get to Facebook Live. So if all of you out there are getting text messages about people not being able to get on the call or not being able to watch Facebook Live, let them know that we are working on it as fast as we can. But that if nothing else, we are going to join tonight for this time, and then we will get everything posted as soon as possible. So let me start out by extending a very, very warm welcome to those of you who are here for the very first time. Part of this program this week is because of you. March was an absolutely incredible month at ASEA. The word that comes to mind so strong every day is resilience. Our team inside the corporate office, outside the corporate office, in the field, all of our vendors, all of our suppliers, all of our everyone associated with this organization, the word resilience comes to mind every single time I think about what has happened over the last 8 weeks, not just around the world, not just in this country, not just at the organization, but with each and every one of us at the individual level. And we wanted to make sure that each one of you, regardless of where you're joining us from tonight, had an opportunity to hear how this company got started, but most importantly, the why behind our incredible mission here at ASEA, which is very simply to better people's lives and to be a force for good in the world. My name is Karen Riley. I am the Vice President of North America here at ASEA. I've been here for 10 years, and I can tell you that they have been the most fulfilling, most rewarding, most gratifying 10 years of my life, both personally and professionally, but of the lives of my family as well. Everyone in my circle of influence has been a benefactor one way or another because of this organization. So I want to welcome you here for the very first time. For those of you who are joining us, again, welcome back. We're delighted to have you. Tonight is all about learning why this company exists. But before I turn the time over to Tyler, I just want to make sure that we share what this entire week looks like for each and every one of you, because I know that at the conclusion of our time tonight, you're going to want to hear more. You're going to want to meet more people at ASEA. So grab a pen and a paper. Grab whatever you like to take notes on. While this call is being recorded for you, the reason I'm asking you to grab something to note tonight is because I want you to focus on writing down the names of people that come to mind as you learn about us and you learn about ASEA and you learn about the incredible genesis that this company has taken. And it's not just tonight. We have an incredible week planned for you. So let me tell you a little bit about what that week looks like. Tonight, of course, you are going to hear all about the genesis of this incredible company. Now, I have spent the last 20 plus years of my career working for network marketing organizations, and I can tell you that this is a unique story. A lot of companies get started because of a disgruntled executive team, because they find a compensation plan, because of X and Y and Z, but it all boils down to their personal ego, personal drive for their own economics. This company is different. And you're going to learn all about that tonight. And then tomorrow, we're going to start talking about the evolution of the company, the mission, the vision, and the values that we work so hard every day. Now, we're not perfect, but we do hold each other accountable, and we do hold ourselves accountable. And that is what's important. And we are perfectly imperfect in this mission that we have to be an organization that offers you and your families for generations an opportunity to have better health, have better financial health as well. And Thursday, you're going to be, to Wednesday, you'll be hearing from our CEO, Chuck Funky, and he's going to share our mission, vision, and values. And then Thursday, our president, Jerem Webb. The reason that I'm at this organization is because of that man right there. He and I worked together at a previous organization, and he absolutely had the best for me in mind when he called and said, there's this little company selling salt water out of Salt Lake City that you need to come and meet. So just like you tonight, I came along and I got to meet ASEA 10 years ago. So Jerem's going to be focusing on where we are today as an organization. He's going to be talking about why this company is a legacy opportunity, why you can put your trust in this organization. And then Friday, I have some very special guests planned. We are going to be talking about and focusing on what's so important right now in our times, which is the home-based business solution. So many of us have come home to work remotely. So many folks have lost their jobs, either permanently or temporarily. Some are getting paid, some are not getting paid. And as I am hearing more and more about my own circle of influence in this crisis, there has never been a better time to take a look at how ASEA is the solution. No pun intended, Tyler. And then so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, all of these calls are taking place at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And then Saturday, we have a very special call for you. Saturday is going to be 11 a.m. Mountain Time. You can join all of these calls on this line at ASEAInTouch.com, or hopefully we'll have that Facebook stuff figured out by tomorrow night, so you can also watch it live on Facebook. So let's get right into tonight's featured speaker. Tyler Norton, for those of you who have heard him before, he needs no introduction because the name itself creates an emotion, right? And what an incredible gift that is for each and every one of us to know we are in such good hands. For those of you who haven't had an opportunity to meet Tyler, he's going to share a little bit more about his background. But let me tell you this, I mentioned earlier that I spent the better part of 20 years working in corporate positions in network marketing. I have never been so grateful to be part of an organization as I have been, particularly over the last 2 months, led by this incredible human being. I love that I get to call him friend. I love that I get to call him mentor. I love that he is so in love with each and every one of you, because I know that my love for each and every one of you is tenfold. And when we can combine and lock arms with a combined purpose, that is a true leader. So Tyler, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm so excited for you to share the genesis as you are the kickoff to this incredible week of campaigning for the opportunity to meet ASEA. So welcome.
Thanks, Karen. Really nice of you. I do have some slides. Shall I start my share at this point?
You betcha. I'm going to stop my screen share and you can go ahead and pop that up. Tyler, I cannot believe while you're doing that, maxed out this line tonight. It's like awesome. Historic. There have been so many historic things happening over the last 8 weeks. I just can't share my excitement enough. I hope that you're feeling it like the way that I'm feeling it, but maxing out these lines tonight, thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, Karen. We sure appreciate you. I'm convinced that the reason we've maxed the lines out is because we're down to no one else has anything left to watch on Netflix or on any other streaming service, because we've got you tonight. But I'm glad you're here. And thank you so much, Karen, for launching the call. To those of you that are here for the first time, thanks for joining us this evening. And that you're my favorite ones on the call because I get a chance to share the story of how this company started for the first time. And I certainly would like to start by telling you that if you're here tonight for the first time, I truly believe that you're here for a reason. And I believe that reason may not necessarily just be you. It's likely people you know and love and care about. It could also be for people that you have yet to meet. But really am thankful that you're here and very, very grateful to have a chance to share this story with all of you. Before I start the message of how this company was started, I would just like to express my love and concern to all of you or any of you that are dealing with this particular challenge we have worldwide right now. I'm so sensitive to the fact that there are people right now as we speak that are suffering. I read an article this morning of the number of healthcare professionals in the world and in our country here in the United States that have been infected by this disease. I am utterly humbled and just blown away at the thought. What comes to mind is the 9/11 moment when everyone was rushing out of the buildings in Lower Manhattan, and fire and police and first responders, firemen are running into the building to provide support. I feel that way about our healthcare professionals that are helping us. And so I wanted to start appropriately acknowledging the challenge and suffering that's going on. I'm sorry for any of you that know loved ones or friends that have been affected by this. Certainly my heart goes out to anyone who's lost a loved one or friend to this. And just genuinely, my heart goes out to any and all that are dealing with the challenge. I think we should all take seriously the counsel we receive from our leaders at this particular time about social distancing and being careful. And I'm so thankful for technology that we can still gather tonight this way, but want to A, express my concern, and B, just let you know that we're mindful of all of you and thankful you're with us tonight, and are certainly trying to do our part to help in a world that needs the help right now. I'd like to give you a high-level overview of what I want to discuss tonight, and I'll start with just this quick outline. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my father. He's the true founder of ASEA, in my opinion, Norton. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I won't go in as much depth as I will with my father, but I think it's an important part of the story that may add some source credibility to it. And I'd like to share a little bit of our backgrounds with you so you have a better understanding of who Dad is and where he comes from. Maybe a little bit about how we found the technology that is the ASEA redox technology here. And then I have to share what I think is a very personal view of my own personal genesis, kind of how I got to my own understanding, and to be honest, my own belief sets about what this all represents. And then I'd like to close a little bit about what we look like today. We are 10 years old this year. 2020 marks 10 years of a company. And frankly, this journey started even prior to that. And I'd like to give you an update as to where we are today after telling you how it all started. So with that, let me jump in and tell you a little bit about my dad. Here's a picture of my dad. For those of you that don't know him, Dad is 80 years old this year. I want to tell you a little bit about his background, if I can. And I'll be quick. I don't want this to get too cumbersome, but you need to know a little bit about my dad to appreciate what this is all about. My dad worked his way through high school and college. He's the oldest of 7 children, and didn't have a lot of money, so his family couldn't help him through college. So my dad paid his way through college by being a manager in the grocery store industry while he attended the University of Utah. It was fun when I was putting these slides together. I was finding old pictures of my dad. I found this Safeway names manager for their Bountiful store here in Utah, and he was studying at the University of Utah at this particular time. And my dad was interesting. He would work really, really hard, pretty much 60 to 70 hours a week. He would get up at 4 in the morning and study for a couple of hours. He'd go to work all day for 10, 12 hours, and then he would run up to the university in the evening and take classes. And I've always appreciated that about my dad, that he was willing to work that hard while going to school to pay his own way. And as soon as he graduated and had a little time, he ran a small food service business that he started that was very successful. But he decided he wanted to stay in the grocery industry, but wanted to come at it from a different angle. He now knew the retail side, he knew the store side, but someone said, you'd do real well if you considered going to work on the food side. So he took a job with a then giant in the industry of General Foods. They've since been merged with Kraft Foods. And Dad worked many years there. He worked 15 years for General Foods. And if you do the math, he had 10 jobs during that 15 years. So quite a bit of movement along the way. We moved from Utah when I was born to Seattle, Washington for a few years. Then to Delaware. He was a regional manager there in Philadelphia area. And then ultimately to New York, we lived in Connecticut and Dad worked in New York, where his final job with General Foods was leading their largest division, which was their beverage division, over 1 billion in sales in White Plains, New York, where their headquarters were. And we stayed there with General Foods. That's pretty much my entire life. When I was about 14 or 15 years old is when an opportunity came for my dad. He was recruited away from General Foods. He came home to tell me that we were leaving Connecticut and moving to Ohio, which I can tell you I was not thrilled about at the time. I've since fallen in love with Ohio and Connecticut. But Dad was recruited away. Oh, these are some images I found that when he was with General Foods years ago. I got a kick out of finding some of these old pictures. But he had a real successful run there, and ultimately was recruited to go over and work for a company called Hobart. Now, those of you that are in the food or food service industry will know that Hobart is a large commercial food equipment company, one of the largest in the country, and probably the best by a lot of standards. And Dad was brought in originally there as the head of sales and service, but then quickly moved up over inside of a 5-year window there and became the executive vice president. Here's an image of Dad with some of the machinery that Hobart makes, large commercial mixers and refrigerators and scales and packing machinery. It was really quite a change for him, and he really thrived in this environment. As I said, went on to be the executive vice president. This is an article they ran when he was the EVP there. So Dad had a great run with Hobart and then was recruited back after Kraft purchased General Foods. And he went back to Kraft and ran a $1.6 billion division there that was in their channel realm. He had all of the club stores, he had all of the convenience stores, he had Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, and just they cobbled together about $1.5 billion of different businesses, and he ran that for several years. And then ultimately finished there as the head of strategy, reporting directly to the worldwide CEO of Kraft, which was $36 billion in size at the time. Dad was in his mid-50s, and there was these are some of the brands you'll all recognize from Kraft. They had a huge conglomerate of different businesses that they had purchased over time. He was responsible there for something called efficient consumer response, which was creating greater efficiency from the end of a purchase all the way back to the production of the product. And Dad took Kraft from 10th out of 10 all the way to 1st out of 10 inside of a few years. And then oddly enough, there was an early retirement opportunity. I remember this day. He came home and said, I've got an opportunity to take a package here. He went in and said, I'd like to retire. And they said, you can't leave. And they kept him another year. And finally, he was able to retire, I think when he was 57 or 58 years old. At the time, he was in Chicago. And when Dad retired, he finally had a chance to move back to Utah, where he's originally from. This is Park City. This was a few years just prior to the Olympics. The '02 Olympics, Winter Olympics, were held there. And Dad settled down. He literally designed and built the home of his dreams. He literally was the draft architect, if you will, of it, and worked with the builder and built it all out the way he wanted. We started having Sunday dinners together at Mom and Dad's home up in Park City. It was just a wonderful time. And we all kind of thought Dad would slow down, even though he was still in his late 50s. And we thought, well, this will be wonderful. He'll be around and we'll be able to spend more time with him. He was a very busy executive for many years. And, that was kind of an interesting run for Dad over all those years in food and food service, starting from a grocery store all the way up to heading strategy for one of the largest food companies in the world. To understand that whole window of time between General Foods and Kraft, you have to know something about this gentleman here. His name is Jim Kiltz. And Dad and Jim worked together for more than 20 years. And just to give you an idea, Jim Kiltz is probably one of the most celebrated consumer goods CEOs of my lifetime. He was the CEO of Kraft worldwide, Oscar Mayer, Nabisco worldwide, and Gillette worldwide. And when Warren Buffett brought Jim Kiltz to run Gillette, he said, I've never talked to anybody about business in general that made more sense to me than Jim Kiltz. He really is quite a special mind in the business world. And this is what Jim Kiltz says of my dad, who was his right-hand guy for about 22 years. He said, I worked with Virtus for over 20 years, and during that time grew to appreciate his capabilities and innate ability to simplify complex scenarios and think very strategically. And it's funny because he said that to my dad as he was retiring, because my dad was launching an organization referred to as Strategic Link. And this was my father's approach to strategy and execution. And it's relevant to the ASEA story. So that's what kind of took my dad forward in his career. Was he retired and said, I'm going to go out and start consulting about strategy and this process that he developed. Now, Strategic Link, just a little bit of context on this. It was my dad's real simplified way to plan a business, and it was making sure that things got done in alignment with the strategy. It had 4 broad areas of focus, and each of those areas had 3 steps tied to it. And he began to go out and share this message and this information with various businesses. Now, remember, he had just kind of retired, so he set up shop doing this consulting work out of Park City. And the very first consulting opportunity he had was for National Beef in the United States. And they came to him and asked him to do some consulting work. And then they quickly offered him a job over their biotech venture called activated lactoferrin. This was a really interesting pivot for my dad. I used to make fun of him that he went from Kraft macaroni and cheese to biotech. And then I told him, I said, hey, maybe the orange cheese and the Kraft mac and cheese is a biotechnology. And he would always jab back at me and say, very funny. I think Dad is one of those unique people that could figure things out. And I'll never forget when he told me, I'm going to go run a biotech company. I'm going to have a lab. I'm going to have several PhDs. Some of you know Dr. Narain Naidu, who wrote the book Redox Life, was my dad's leader of the lab there. And they set out to commercialize a naturally occurring protein called lactoferrin. They'd activated it, and it was a joint venture between National Beef and DMV out of Europe, one of the largest dairy manufacturers in Europe. So Dad set out to do that, and that was what he was doing, gosh, maybe 15, 20 years ago now. That was what he was doing, but it was all born from that strategic modeling that he did. Now, quick update on my background, and I'll show you how these things converge. So I took a degree from the University of Utah. Oh, I got to start with my family. Sorry. I am a father, happy and proud father of 6, a father-in-law to 2 beautiful daughters-in-law, and a happy grandpa who happens to be my grandson, Henry, there. Just came today. I'm down at my parents' second home in southern Utah today. We've spent a few days down here quarantining with our family and kids who are out of school, obviously. And my little grandson came down to see me today. So that's my clan, if you want to know a little bit about me. I'm the youngest of 4. So this is a classic 70s shot I found. Love the collars. And I'm the youngest in that picture. There's my dad when he was a young man. And Dad and I was the youngest, so I got to spend a fair amount of time with my dad. I found this picture of Dad and I when we lived back in Connecticut. So a little bit about me. I took a degree out of the University of Utah, as I mentioned a moment ago. I went to work in the insurance industry for a Mutual of New York, known often as Money or the Money Group. And Mutual of New York is one of at the time was one of the oldest life insurance companies in the country, over 160 years old. I spent 7 years there in financial advisor position. I was a sales manager. I had the #1 sales management team in the country. I was asked to be a national director overall training and development for sales managers. And then I was the youngest general manager in that company's history. When I was 29, I ran Arizona and New Mexico for Mutual of New York. I was recruited away oh, by the way, my father was teaching me that strategic link process all the time. And so while I was in these jobs as a young man, I'd go to my dad and I'd say, can you teach me how you're thinking strategically? And he started to download that strategic link process to me early on. That actually led to being recruited as a vice president in my early 30s for a 100-year-old insurance company here in Salt Lake, Beneficial Life. And a couple years later, I was promoted to a senior vice president and lastly to a chief distribution officer. So I was responsible for all revenue and sales of that company during that window of time. I sold a block of the business to a portfolio company of Goldman Sachs and Blackstone, where I spent a year as a senior VP. But then I just decided, you know what, I want to go consult like my dad. I want to take these processes that he's taught me over the last 15, 16 years and go out and teach them to other people. And if you'll see in just a minute how that led to ASEA. So this is kind of how it all converged. You have my dad's background and his work, and you have my background and we ultimately were asked to go do a consulting engagement. That consulting strategy engagement led to the finding of what is now ASEA. And to give you some sense, I got to tell you how this worked. When I was working for these companies in yellow here, Beneficial Life, I began to teach that strategic link process to folks that worked with me. And one of the gentlemen I taught it to came to me and said, would you be willing to help a company that I've invested in that's building some unique technologies for the pharmaceutical industry by teaching that company strategy and that strategic link process? And so I said, you know, that's interesting. My father was had just finished running this biotech company in yellow here. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm super busy at work, but I've been asked if we would do a small consulting engagement. Dad had just finished running his own biotech company for 4 years, and his contract was up. And so we both went, and we were invited out to meet a company that ultimately we were going to do some consulting work for. They were a group that I was referred to, this gentleman that I mentioned that I'd worked with, and it was a small biotech company in upstate northern Utah. And they had more than 10 years and several $1 million invested in development and research around a certain set of technologies, 2 of which were their primary focus that they were trying to make relevant for the pharma industry. And they had this really one unique product that was made from salt and water. And as they began to describe this to us, we were certainly taken with it, at the same time thinking, this doesn't sound legit or real. And so they ultimately fell in love with my dad. He's a super good business head, and said, would you be willing to take a seat on our board of directors and help us to maximize the potential of these technologies? And so Dad, said, well, listen, I will, but I'd like to spend a little time taking a look at your research. So he asked them to give him a bunch of their patents and a bunch of their research that they had done. And my dad started calling all sorts of universities and institutions, Harvard, Indiana University, just a number of different places that had done research on these sets of technologies, particularly on the one that was based on salt and water. And I'll never forget, I kind of dismissed the interactions my dad was having with them at the time. I didn't really think much of it. I just thought it was a small consulting engagement. But my father's intrigue and interest and curiosity started to mount about what it was that they had. And remember, Dad had spent time running this biotech in yellow here, so he knew how to read the research. He could see the different research reports coming through, and he had just spent 4 years almost preparing himself for this. I really have felt that over the years. And it enabled him to see some things that clearly I would not have been able to see. I came to the house one day, and he had books all strewn about in his library, and he said, Tyler, I don't think these folks really know what they have. And I remember being really quick to dismiss what he was saying. I was like, well, I'm not sure that's that big of a deal. But he continued to tell me, he said, this is a really big deal, what these people are doing here. And I'm finding this out, and I'm researching this, and I'm calling these universities. And he was convinced that there was something really significant involved in that technology. Now, to give you some sense, the next time I came to the house, I kissed my mom on the cheek and I said, hey, where's Dad? And he's downstairs in the basement. And I go downstairs and I see this thing. This is the exact image of the device that I see. And to be honest, I wasn't paying a lot of attention to what he was doing, but he said, hey, come over here, let me show you this. And he said, this is the device that makes the product I was telling you about that we went up and met with that company on. And I got to be honest, I mean, it was really weird. It was like he had mason jars and he was making this product. And the first image that came to my mind, guys, you'll get a kick out of this, was this image right here from Back to the Future. I was seeing that my dad's hair was lifting up. He's putting on lab coats. And I was like, what is this? The flux capacitor? Give me a break. And my father was saying, hey, this is the machine. This is the device. This is how they're making the product. And it didn't help much that he was like, hey, drink some of this. And I was like, not a chance. I don't know what this stuff is. Now, it didn't help. And this is a 100% true story. You'll see right here, I started calling this the stuff. I'd be like, Dad, what is this stuff? There was no name for it. I just affectionately referred to it as the stuff, in derision, I assure you. And I was making fun of my dad about it. And of course, when he's telling me to drink it, it didn't help that right on the very front of where they made this, there's a 1-liter beaker there where they would make this. This is the truth. I've hidden this so I can reveal this to you. This is what it said on it. That is an actual image of the device, and it said jewelry cleaner. So I'm like, Dad, what in the world are you doing? What is this stuff? And why is it called a jewelry cleaner? And he said, oh, disregard the jewelry cleaner. And I said, I can't. I mean, what is this? And he said, they were sending it to some other country and didn't want people to be concerned. So they just wrote jewelry cleaner on it. And that's not what it is. Well, can you imagine? I mean, let's be real. My dad is 69, 67 years old at this point. Very successful career, right? Over many years doing different things. And I'm thinking, what in the world is he into now? And I partly felt like it was my responsibility. And so I joked with him for months on end about the stuff and what he was doing, but he was growing in his curiosity and confidence as to what this was all about. Now, as you can tell, I didn't have an early conviction about this. I didn't have the benefit of running a biotech company, and I really wasn't digging through a bunch of research and connecting dots. But I did go through my own experience that I want to share with you guys as a reference point. And my experience started for me at church. I was at a church meeting where we were discussing the welfare of the various members of our congregation. This was a frequent meeting where we would get together and discuss the needs of the members of our church. So assume for a minute someone has lost his job or her job. We would know about it in this meeting, about the general welfare of everybody. Or let's say someone has fallen and broken their hip, a widow in our ward or church, and they need some help. We would end up providing meals for that person. And so on this particular Sunday, we were in this meeting discussing the needs of the members of our church. And I'll never forget, a neighbor of mine, contemporary to me in age, by the name of Jason, was brought up on the agenda. And there was kind of a heavy mood in the room as the leader of the church. It's a lay ministry, so this is my neighbor. And he said, I'm really sorry to tell all of you that Jason's situation, his health, has gotten worse, and his challenges seems to be something that they can't really crack the code on. He's been told to enjoy the time he has with his family. And I remember sitting in that meeting, really trying to make sense of what I had just heard. I don't really remember anything else on the agenda of that meeting. I just remember being so distraught about the fact that someone pretty close to me in age and just around the corner from my home was really facing a challenge of that order and magnitude. And I went home, and I remember distinctly sitting in an office, not unlike this one of my dad's here, and my wife walked in and said, hey, you seem kind of heavy. What's going on? And I said, well, I just came back from this meeting, and I've learned some things about our neighbor. And we sat there and discussed a little bit, like, is there something we could do? We thought about taking meals in to the family and helping them with that. And I mean, it's a good gesture, but it didn't seem terribly significant. And we thought, well, maybe we should watch their children so that he and his wife could go spend a weekend together somewhere. And we talked about that. And then can you imagine what popped into my mind? I thought, wait a minute, well, what about the stuff? My dad had been telling me about the stuff and the various properties that he was confident and convinced it had to promote general welfare and health. And I remembered thinking to myself, I wonder if this stuff could help Jason. Now, to be fair to you guys, and I think fair to most people who learn about this, that I was sitting in between these two things. I was deep in fear and heavy in doubt about what this all was really about. Remember, it was stuff. I didn't know anything about it. So I was scared. I was concerned about even suggesting to him that he should try this. And I you notice there's two arrows between fear and doubt. They go hand in hand. So that's pretty much where I was on the You Are Here map as it related to this stuff. Nevertheless, I just felt like something needed to be done. And if I could do something to help, maybe this would be worth trying. I certainly had a great deal of confidence in my dad, even though he was kind of scaring me with this new venture. So sure enough, I called my dad and I said, Dad, listen, I've got a neighbor. He's going through a challenge. I know him reasonably well. I'm wondering if this stuff could help. And he heard a little bit and said, yeah, it'll help. And I said, now, how can you be so confident? Just your sense of confidence. I jokingly tell people my dad is the guy that may be wrong, but is never in doubt, which as a teenager is a horrible trait. Maybe in general can be a horrible thing, but he just has a high degree of confidence that, when he's right, he's right. And he, of course, had read through all the research. He knew what he had. And he said, Tyler, it's safe and it's certainly not going to hurt. I believe it has the potential to help. And again, I was so concerned. All I can think about is moonshine in a mason jar and a jewelry cleaner. And I said, well, can you make some for me? And he said, sure, I can. And so believe it or not, he went and got a blue jug, the kind you would take camping and up in the mountains or somewhere. And he filled it up with this product. And I show up at the house and he throws it in my trunk and says, I'm like, well, what do I tell the guy? And he says, just tell him to drink a few ounces in the morning and a few ounces at night. And guys, I got to be honest. I was so worried about this and I was so much in fear and doubt that I just wasn't sure I could do this. And so I thought, gosh, how do I get this to Jason and kind of wash my hands from it a little bit? So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll call the leader of the church and I'll have him give it to Jason so I can kind of stay away from it. He won't connect the dots to me. And I'll just do it on the basis that I think it's the right thing to do, but I'll kind of stay clear of it. So believe it or not, this is a true story. I called the lay minister of the church, whose name was Craig. Craig happened to live directly across the street from Jason. And I said, Craig, listen, I've got something that might help Jason, but I don't want him to know where he got it. And I can't tell you what it is. And in fact, I want you to give it to him. And he says, well, why don't you give it to him? And I said, because I'm scared to death that this might not be good for him. And he goes, well, why would you want me to do it? And I said, well, you're a church leader. You got to do what's good for the people. And he laughed. And to his credit, everlasting credit, by the way, he said, well, yeah, bring it to me. I'll take it to him. So a bit of a coward, I took it directly to Craig's house across the street from Jason. I said, now, don't tell him where you got it. I don't want him to connect the dots back to me. I don't know what it is. I can't even tell you what to tell him. And do me a favor, wait till I'm gone before you walk across the street. So I hurried and shuffled off. And sure enough, Craig walked across the street and knocked on the door. And Jason came to the door and he said, look, here's something that's supposed to help you. You need to drink a little bit. Now let's back up. Let's be real here for just a minute. Number one, would you have even thought of taking it to him? If you say no, I think you're a real human being. I get that. Better yet, would you be willing to take it across the street to him, right? If you were Craig, I got to believe a good portion would say, no, not if I didn't know what it was. And then here's the kicker for me is, would you drink it if you're Jason? I mean, would you literally take some foreign object that you don't even know what it is and say, well, I'll drink it? And so I really didn't know what to expect, but I kind of felt like, you know what? I can wash my hands. I did my best. I tried to help. And what ensued over the coming weeks, my dad went ahead and purchased the research and the patents. This was about that same time that the small biotech company was actually struggling to finance all their research. And my dad said, you know what, I'm interested in this. He put a group together and they purchased all of the research and the patents associated with what is now our core ASEA redox product. And for me, it was an interesting time because I had gone from the jewelry cleaner and the moonshine in a mason jar, and I started hearing them talking about redox signaling and molecules. I heard that for the first time, the notion of cellular communication, which I always thought was linked to a cell phone, and later learned that they were talking about our body's cells, and they have an ability to communicate through signaling mechanisms. These were times when I was hearing things like redox biochemistry I'd never heard of before. And ultimately, I met with some of the early lead scientists my dad worked with who said, Tyler, this could potentially be the single greatest health science breakthrough of our lifetimes. I mean, this was hard for me to get my hands around with the whole mason jar. And all of this is what led to what you guys now know to be this ASEA redox product. Now, it was kind of during that same time, my dad had an opportunity to sell the technology. I think a lot of people give my dad a lot of credit at this time. I want to be fair and honest. Dad's original intent in buying this technology was to flip it. No question about it. It was simply, hey, there's value here. His good friend, Jim Kiltz, who I shared with you earlier, was then and is still today on the board of Pfizer. So I think my dad was thinking, you know what, there's something going on here. Maybe I'll buy it and we can sell it. But what had happened, not unlike my experience with Jason, is he started to share it with people. I still think to this day he took incredible risk doing it, but he did. And he started to learn of the power and benefit of what it could do for people. And it really caused him to step back from a very real offer he received to purchase the technology and all the research and patents that he had acquired. And to his credit, no question about it, Dad chose not to sell during that interval of time because he really felt like if he did, much of the benefit of what this represents would be lost to humanity. It was all during that window of time that, I got a call back right around that same time from Craig, the church leader. And he says, Tyler, are you sitting down? I've got something to talk to you about. And I didn't know if it was bad or good at the time, but he said, I just got off the phone with Jason and his situation is improving. Of course, I didn't know exactly what he meant. And he proceeded to give me some details about how things were improving. And then he said, I was waiting to hear, did he actually drink the stuff? And Craig said, Tyler, that's why I'm calling. He's interested in getting more of it and is out of it and would like to know how to continue taking it. He's pretty convinced that any improvement in his situation, he can tie back to, quote unquote, the stuff. Now, this was an interesting challenge for me, right? Not the least of which was having to tell my dad that he was right. As the youngest of four in a home with a dad that's a pretty strong charactered person, the last thing I want to do is tell him he's right. But it was a very awkward and unique thing. I remember distinctly, I found myself asking this what if question. What if what my dad has been telling me is true? What if this really has helped him? What if this is really truly able to help him? And I think a lot of people, a lot of you on this call tonight and a lot that may be invited to join tonight have or will have this kind of what if moment. Now, let me remind you on my You Are Here map, this was an interesting challenge. I was heavily and squarely in fear and doubt. And this experience kind of kicked me into an interesting place of hope. And you'll notice that I played ping pong back and forth between hope and doubt here. I would say, wow, what if this really can help or has helped? And then what if, this is crazy. Your mind's a pharmacy. You can decide anything you want to decide. These were the honest thoughts I was going through. I was so interested in better understanding his experience that rather than call my dad, I decided I would call Jason. So I called Jason direct. And I said, Jason, I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I gave the stuff to Craig and Craig gave the stuff to you. He's told me that you've had some recent good news. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? And I've shared this story throughout the world, but the truth is it went quiet on the phone. And he said, do you have any idea what I believe this has done for me and is doing for me? And I said, I really don't. I said, could you take some time and walk me through it? And he proceeded to tell me things that I had really never heard of, but now 10 years later, I've heard thousands of times, literally. And I think it's an interesting relationship between doubt and hope, or fear and doubt and hope. And if I put experience over here, the only way that the ping pong match between doubt and hope stops is if you start to have meaningful experience. In this particular case, one hash mark does not represent compelling enough experience to maybe not continue to wonder. And that was my experience. I had that one experience with Jason and it was significant for him, but I still wondered how much causality you could point to what we had shared with him. It was during this time that I started to help my dad in earnest to get the company off the ground. And I started to speak to people and we started to share it. And pretty soon at the end of a meeting, I'd have another experience where someone would come up and say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And pretty soon I got to 5 experiences, and those experiences started to inform hope. It started to enliven hope. And pretty soon it was 5, it was 10. And I found myself having a really unique process of moving from fear and doubt, and then this hopeful place of, wow, what if this could really help? And the experiences of many people, not just Jason. Jason was my first, but I had several experiences where Dad or I or others, as we started to build the teams in the field, started to share this. We had a lot of feedback about this was benefiting people's lives. And, when you have enough hope, experience connected, it moves you to a place of belief. And that blue triangle becomes a really powerful spiral where it's not informed by hype. It's not informed by what you think it may be. It's actual, it's real. These are real life stories. These are people coming up to me at the end of meetings saying, my life's entirely different because of this, or a family member coming up to thank my dad particularly for doing what he did. And it got so strong that it kind of got to a place where that fear and doubt connection started to fade. It kind of walled up. And I really didn't spend a lot of time thinking about fear and doubt. I just would say, hey, this is something that people need to be doing and trying, particularly people that are dealing with a challenge. I'd love to tell you that every single person we ever shared this with had a really positive experience. That was not the case, but we had enough and a significant amount that my beliefs started to really get strengthened. And if you know anything about the way my mind works, and I think yours too, once you believe in something, it enables this next stage in this You Are Here map, and that is you can act. I don't think any meaningful action takes place in life unless you believe that it will make a difference. And I got to that place to the degree where I was willing to jump in and really help grow this from those early stages. And so this kind of represents my own ASEA genesis. This is where it worked for me. And I actually believe, for those of you on the call for the first time, you'll end up going through something similar, either for yourself or for someone you love or know. As you lean into this a little bit and try it, I think you'll go through the same thing where you'll have doubt. I don't blame you for having doubt. I had those same doubts, but we now have research. We now have a genetic study. We have lots more awareness and understanding of what this is today. It's certainly not the stuff. It is, in fact, a redox supplement. It is a cell signaling supplement that it really, really enables your body to respond in a very unique way to the challenges you may have. And it promotes general health regardless of challenges and boosts your immune system and a host of other things. And I think you'll find that over time. But I still believe you'll end up going through this, this You Are Here map on your own. I know most that have been heavily involved could say, I went through the same experience. So let's talk a little bit as I wrap the call up tonight with where we are today. I mean, we've got a wonderful mission that really is very simple. And if you would have gone back to ask my dad why he didn't just sell the technology, at the time it was just, Tyler, I want to better people's lives and be a force for good in the world. That was it. It was just, people need this, and we have a responsibility to go share it with people. And we're on a journey right now to become globally recognized as the leader in cellular health and redox-based technologies. It's a big deal. Redox, the way I would describe redox, I've shared this before, is if anyone 25 years ago would have said antioxidant in a public setting, no one really would have captured or thought much of that. It's been many years that have prepared people to understand what are antioxidants and why they're important in general health. The interesting thing is that because we always say antioxidants, the general notion is that oxidants in any form are bad. And the fact is that oxidants in a balanced form are very good. And you need reductants and oxidants in order to get into homeostasis in your body. And that redox is both reductants and oxidants in their balanced state. That's a powerful concept if you consider that antioxidants 25 years ago would have been a great place to put your time and energy. Well, what you're going to see now is the next 10 to 15, 20 years, you're going to see more prevalent reference to redox in life sciences. And we've been 10 years in front of the curve on that and continue to lead in that space. We will continue to own that space moving forward. And we have a goal, as the vision statement says here, to achieve distribution worldwide of 3 things. We want to distribute our life-changing product sets. we want to distribute our financial opportunity, and we really want to spend time distributing our culture, which are the things that we believe and stand for, that we think will draw and attract the light and talent that we want in the teams that we build around the world. And, you think about where we've come from in that framework. We went from a jewelry cleaner, 1 liter, stuff, to a 40,000 square foot home office. We have a 60,000 plus square foot production facility just a mile down the road from that office on the top, where we manufacture the stuff. And now we know that that stuff is ASEA. This kind of continuum has happened not just for me, for lots of people around the world. Over 10 million bottles of ASEA have been sold. That's understated. It's significantly higher than that. And not only that, we've been able to increase our product portfolio around both redox technologies and overall cellular and general health to a really interesting, robust portfolio of products that are both the skincare line, the Renew 28 redox-based gel, which is an incredibly powerful product, along with Source, LifeMax, Biome, and Omega, which round out our Via line, which is a nutritional line. It's really been quite a journey to go from just that simple mason jar all the way up to that product portfolio. We now sell ASEA in 33 countries around the world. So our vision of achieving worldwide distribution of those things is happening. And I'm pleased to tell you that we've grown significantly every year since inception. And most notably, the last 2 years, we've doubled the company and its overall growth, moving from 2010, really 2009, this says here, when we launched in early 2010, all the way to last year. A couple other interesting facts. We feel like we stand on a very firm foundation. That redox platform I mentioned to you, boy, it's no small thing in the world, and it's going to continue to grow. And we really have the 4 center squares on the chessboard of what I think is redox. I don't think of us as a startup company. I think we're an early momentum company, as evidenced by the 2 years of doubling. We've had 50% growth in each of the past 2 years. Last year we were 77th in the world in the Direct Selling Association top 100. We just got word 2 weeks ago we're now 44th in the world. So we're inside the top 50 of all direct selling companies, which includes a universe of thousands. And we're really, really excited about the growth that we're seeing. I mentioned we're in 33 countries. We have no long-term debt. We're profitable, and we have financed all of our growth and development out of our own health and financial health. And we have no outside stakeholders in the terms of debt holders or creditors that have any kind of covenants or influence or control on the company. Our executive team has, on the average, been together 7+ years, which in this industry is very unique. Chuck Funky, our CEO, who you'll hear from tomorrow evening, and Jerem and I have been working together, the 3 of us, almost since inception. Chuck joined in 2011, Jerem in 2010. And Chuck and I worked together as officers in the insurance industry for 8 years prior to that. So he and I have 18 years experience working together. Karen, who so capably leads our North American region, is 10 years with the company. Justin Wilson, over 10 years with the company. So you've got significant executive leadership that's been around together. And I can't stress this enough. This redox platform is a really, really special place to be. It's unique. We don't see ourselves playing really in the same swim lane as anybody else. We've got our own unique swim lane. We've got our own unique story, and we're really excited about where we can take it from here. All of our systems are scalable and online. We've taken years to get to that place right now. Our production facility, I showed you an image of that, can scale to 4 times our current revenue with very little additional capital infusion or capital expenditures. We've got a really good modular approach to scaling that growth, and we're excited to be able to move there. Our field leadership, many of the folks on this call and the ones that have invited you, really steady and strong. We love our field leaders. We think we've got a great culture. We're not about top spin, and we're maybe not as sexy as some others try to be. We just try to be real, substantive, and authentic about the way we're doing this. A lot of companies in this space will start saying, let's start a network marketing company and then go hunt for a product. we are the exact opposite. My dad found a product, felt strongly that the world needed it quickly, and asked himself very simply, with, interestingly enough, 20 to 30 years experience in retail and food service, he said, no, we can't go those traditional routes because this needs to be told in the form of a story and shared with people from one to another. So it was interesting that he found the product that he knew the world needed. He simply said, how can I get this to the people who need it quickest? And that's what he did. Dad really, nothing's changed in my dad's life. He was financially successful prior, and I'll submit so was I. And he lives in the same home. He drives the same car. I mean, not much has changed about my dad in the last 10 years. But I will tell you this, he sits at home and he has stacks and stacks of letters, and he reads 5 a day. My dad's very methodical, and he'll read 5 letters a day that people have written. And then he 3-hole punches them and he logs all of them. And he logs them in many different ways. Some of them he logs about the impact that they've had with their health. Sometimes he logs them just because of the nature of the story of the person that shared it. And it's not uncommon for me to go to the house and see my dad, and he's sitting in a chair and says, hey, come read this story. And he'll hand me a piece of paper and I'll read it, and I'll look up after reading it and kind of nod my head, and he'll say, no, what am I supposed to do about that? I mean, he really genuinely is just super soft-hearted about the fact that people are having a positive experience with ASEA. And he never really talks about it through any economic lens. And that's a very genuine thing. He talks about it through the impact it's having, and that's part of our culture. This was my dad's retirement. He retired in 2015 and handed over the reins to us here at the company. We've got a great leadership team, over 200 and I want to say 60 to 70 now employees. These are folks all around the world. This is certainly an image of just a handful of our leaders helping to carry his vision forward. But it's just fascinating to me to see the risks that my dad was willing to take, and where this company has gone in the last 10 years. I'm going to stop my share here and just share the last few remarks with just no screen share here. Bear with me 1 second. You know, I want to thank you for joining us again tonight and letting me share a little bit about how this all started. That was a lot. I know that hopefully I didn't put you to sleep telling you a little bit about the background, but it's a story that is real and genuine, and it has some postscripts to it. Number one, Jason, my neighbor, went on to live for 7 years. He did pass away. But it was not, it was largely due to all of the different things that they had tried to do to help him and the complications associated with all of that. And for years after, I had text messages and calls from him sharing his thanks and gratitude for what that had represented in his life. You know, we live in a tricky time. This is a time when lots of folks are losing their jobs. Lots of folks are more interested, concerned, and rightfully so aware of their health. And I think we have an opportunity and a responsibility to consider how we might be able to relieve some of the suffering and some of the ambiguity that might be out there in people's lives. I heard tonight, Chuck was telling me our sales in Portugal last week jumped pretty notably, and we were curious about it. And it was largely due to a woman who had lost her business, her restaurant business, because of the lockdowns and quarantines, found this opportunity by virtue of a friend. And that friend suggested she look into it. She did, and she immediately launched into building a business around this. And we were fascinated to find out that a big amount of that jump just last week could be attributed to just that one individual who saw the vision of what this represents and took it seriously. I think there's people that are looking, that will be looking. I don't think by any stretch this is going to go away. I think we have a long tail on the challenges we've been dealing with as a world and as a nation. And I think we have an opportunity to take a message of some hope and opportunity to people at a time when their interest levels will be higher than normal. I think everyone's awareness about health and about frontline defense of our bodies during such a precarious and unique time in our history also creates a unique opportunity. I want to be careful. I don't want to exploit or take advantage in any way this virus. We shouldn't be going out telling people this is a cure. We should not be saying that this prevents it in any way. We should simply be saying that we know this, strengthens and helps people's immune system, and be very careful about overstating it. I have seen personally what I believe to be messages and marketing attempts that I think are exploiting the fear and the situation in the world. And I don't want to have any part in that. And I would ask you to do the same. That said, I mentioned at the beginning of this call that I felt like if you were on this call, it was for a reason. And I don't think the reason is you per se. It's been my experience that you're here largely because there are people now in your center of influence or sphere of influence that may need this. And I think you should consider your motives based on nothing more than that. I find if we make this about business or about the business too quickly, we tend to miss the noble purpose in it. And when we make our focus the people and doing what we can to help people to have a better life or to be a force for good at a time that needs it, it's those moments when the right things occur. And so I think you need to focus most on that. As far as this company, I can tell you if you're looking for a place to land or consider, I think we're as good as any. As I mentioned earlier, we're really focused more on substance and authenticity than we are maybe the hype that this industry can be known for. I will say that I think network marketing as a whole is largely misunderstood and very much hidden from talent. When talent finds network marketing, think about it. How many people start out a college career or go to school or any number of things and want to focus on going into a direct selling profession or a network marketing profession? The answer is not many. When talented people find this industry, and I would submit particularly when talented, capable, good people find ASEA, there's really no one that's too good for this opportunity. My father, having been a Fortune 50 executive for almost 3 decades, would tell you and said to me recently, I wish I was 40 years old. I've had more fun from age 70 to 80 than I have in any other era of my life. And I wish I had found network marketing earlier in my career. It's a superb profession and one that's very, I think, poorly understood and interpreted. And if you gave it a shot, you would be blown away at what it could represent. It's an enricher on a lot of levels, not just economically. The relationships you'll establish, the teams and alliances that you'll build, to say nothing of those days when you'll get paid in goosebumps, which I've learned from so many people, where someone will call and thank you for the reach and impact you've had in their life, similar to Jason when I spoke with him. So guys, I want to tell you, thanks for joining us tonight and letting me share this story. Hopefully you can sense that we didn't really set out to do this. It kind of came to us, but we do feel a stewardship and a responsibility to share it with as many people as we can. And we've been really amazed to see the movement around the world and the impact that it's having. I know that, Karen, I'm just going to close the call out. So I want to say thanks. And for those of you that have been a part of this ASEA movement for a long time, I know I kind of angled my remarks tonight to those that are new, but to those of you that have been with us for a long time, I just want to say thank you for your influence in my life and for the good that you've done in the world and helping us to further this mission. ASEA really is not a company. ASEA is a group of people that have common and shared beliefs and want to do something good in the world. And you contribute as significantly to that end as I or anyone else might in my own sphere. So thank you for your contributions. And I hope everyone will stay healthy and safe as we continue to get through this, and we will get through it together. Let's be good stewards of what we have, share what we have where appropriate. And I look forward to being with you guys later on Saturday as I share a little more about our culture. You'll have a great session tomorrow evening with our CEO and Wednesday or Thursday with our president. I think Karen set up a wonderful lineup for everybody virtually to stay connected. So thanks again, Karen, and to all of you. And I wish you all the very, very best. Hope this little story has been helpful for you to get a feel for how this all started. Thanks, guys.